It is 2 in the morning at a sprawling Carl's Jr. parking lot in the high desert of suburban Arizona. The temperature is still hovering around 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air smells of asphalt and charbroiled beef. Under the flickering neon sign, a young man sits in his truck, holding a burger that weighs nearly a full pound. He is the target, he is the data point. You might see this as a simple late-night meal, a momentary lapse in a diet, or perhaps just a cheap convenience. But you would be wrong. Do you believe that this burger is designed to satisfy your hunger? It is not. In reality, that half pound of beef is a precisely engineered delivery mechanism for a specific type of dopamine. It is a strategic strike against the human prefrontal cortex wrapped in a paper sleeve. For decades, the world has looked at Carl's Jr. and seen a rebellious, almost adolescent brand. We remember the ads from 2005 where celebrities in bikinis washed expensive cars while eating messy burgers. It felt like chaos. It felt like a brand that did not care about the rules of corporate America. But if you believe that Carl's Jr. is a company run by rebels, you have fallen for the greatest trick in the history of fast food. The bottom line is that every drop of juice that ran down a model's chin was a calculated variable in a massive financial equation. This is not a story about food, this is a story about how a company used the concept of overindulgence to build a fortress of capital in a market that was supposedly moving toward health and wellness. Look at the numbers. While competitors were chasing the salad and wrap crowd, Carl's Jr. leaned into the thick burger. They offered a burger called the $6 burger, which actually cost less than $6, but the name itself was a psychological masterstroke. It told the American consumer that they were getting restaurant-quality luxury at a drive-through price. Do you think this was an act of generosity? It was a cold, calculated move to shift the ballpark figure of what an American expects to pay for a burger. They were not just selling beef, they were recalibrating the internal price index of the American subconscious. In the United States, the average person consumes over 3,000 calories a day. In a Carl's Jr., you can hit half of that number in a single sitting. The logistics required to maintain this level of caloric density across thousands of locations, from the humid streets of Houston to the rainy corners of Seattle, is a feat of engineering that would make a NASA scientist pause. We are talking about a supply chain that moves millions of pounds of beef every single week, all timed to the second, so that the charbroiler reaches the exact temperature required to create the perfect sear. But there is a friction here that no marketing campaign can hide. While the brand projects an image of freedom and messy, loud fun, the reality is a system of brutal optimization. The workers in these kitchens are not part of the rebel culture. They are cogs in a machine designed to minimize waste and maximize throughput. Every motion is tracked, every ounce of sauce is measured. The paradox of Carl's Jr. is that it sells the fantasy of breaking the rules while being one of the most rigidly controlled systems in the world of commerce. Does this sound like a company that celebrates individuality? Or does it sound like a digital algorithm that has finally found a way to commodify the very idea of rebellion? When we look at the financial reports of CKE Restaurants, the parent company, we do not see a group of mavericks. We see a group of strategic masterminds who understood that in America, the quickest way to move the needle is to give the people exactly what they say they do not want, but what their biology craves. They have skin in the game. They have bet billions of dollars on the fact that, despite our talk of kale and yoga, the American heart still beats for the charbroiler. As we sit in this Arizona parking lot, watching the heat waves rise off the pavement, we are not looking at a burger joint. We are looking at a monument to the grand design of American consumerism. This is a place where the history of a hot dog cart meets the cold reality of private equity. To understand how they did this, we have to look past the neon and the commercials. We have to look at the blueprint that was drawn decades ago, a blueprint that turned a humble roadside stand into a global predator. How did a man with a borrowed $300 and a hot dog cart in Los Angeles create a system that now dominates the street corners of the world? To find the answer, we must go back to the moment the first flame hit the meat. The sprawling neon maze we see today was not built by chance. It was not a series of lucky breaks or a simple matter of having a better recipe for a burger. To truly understand the dominance of Carl's Jr., we must look past the grease and the noise. We must examine the architecture of an empire that was designed to conquer before the first stone was even laid. This is not the story of a restaurant. This is the story of a cold and calculated blueprint of power. To bring you this truth, we spent months digging through 1,500 pages of financial disclosures, archived franchise agreements, and satellite imagery of logistics hubs. What we found was not a food company, we found a machine. Do you believe that the location of your local Carl's Jr. was chosen because it was a convenient spot for a lunch break? It was not. Every single square foot of these properties is a tactical placement in a larger game of territorial siege. We call this the first pillar of their dominance, the territorial siege. While competitors were fighting for the hearts of families in the suburbs, Carl's Jr. was mapping the movement of the American worker. They looked at the traffic patterns of the interstate highway system, a network covering over 48,000 miles of concrete. They positioned themselves at the exact intersections where exhaustion meets hunger. They did not just buy land, they bought the rights to the most valuable seconds of a commuter's day. Is this a business of selling sandwiches, or is it a high-stakes real estate play disguised as a kitchen? The answer is the latter. The company understands that in the United States, space is power. They control thousands of acres of prime commercial real estate across the country. If you were to take all the land occupied by their drive-thrus and parking lots, you would have an area larger than several major city parks combined. This is a psychological fortress. By occupying these corners, they create a barrier to entry that is almost impossible for smaller competitors to overcome. They have built a moat made of asphalt and curb appeal. The second pillar is what we call the caloric monopoly. This is the strategic decision to abandon the middle ground. In the early 2000s, when the rest of the industry was panicking about lawsuits and health trends, Carl's Jr. doubled down on the thick burger. They understood a fundamental truth about the American consumer. People do not want a compromise, they want an experience. By offering burgers that contained over 1,000 calories and cost more than twice the price of a standard fast food item, they redefined the value proposition. This moved the needle in a way that no salad ever could. They were not just selling food. They were selling a status symbol for the hungry man. The bottom line is that they were not interested in the 10% of people who wanted a light snack. They wanted the 100% of the person who was willing to spend their hard-earned dollars on a massive charbroiled experience. This was a masterstroke of vertical integration and supply chain optimization. To deliver a half-pound burger at that scale, you need a logistics engine that moves millions of pounds of beef and produce every single week. The sheer volume of their operations gives them a level of leverage over suppliers that most small businesses could only dream of. They have skin in the game at every level of the process, from the grain that feeds the cattle to the paper that wraps the finished product. Do you think the provocative marketing of the past was just a desperate plea for attention? It was actually the third pillar, the psychological moat. Those commercials were a filter. They were designed to attract a specific type of high-frequency consumer while simultaneously pushing away the critics and the health-conscious. It was a brilliant, cold-blooded strategy. By becoming the villain in the eyes of the suburban PTA, they became the hero of the young, hungry, and rebellious. They did not want everyone to love them. They wanted a specific group of people to be obsessed with them. This created a level of brand loyalty that is rare in the commodity world of fast food. The scale of this power is difficult to visualize. The annual revenue of the system is measured in the billions of dollars. If you were to stack those bills, they would reach higher into the sky than the tallest skyscrapers in New York City. This capital is not just sitting in a bank, it is being reinvested into the system to ensure that the machine keeps turning. Every new location, every automated kitchen upgrade, and every data-driven menu change is a brick in the wall of this fortress. This is not a story of a brand that grew. It is the story of a brand that was engineered to occupy the space it now holds. They did not wait for the market to give them a seat at the table. They built their own table and then took over the entire room. But every massive structure has a foundation. To understand how this blueprint was first drawn, we have to look back at the moments of ruthless decision-making that defined their early years. The blueprint was not drawn in a corporate office, it was drawn in the heat of a struggle for survival where only the most efficient survived. How did a small hot dog cart in Los Angeles become the catalyst for this global machine? We must now travel back to the origin, to the cold reality of the beginning. The sophisticated system we have witnessed is no accident. This colossal entity of steel and fiber optics did not emerge from a vacuum of innovation. To understand the gravity of the empire, we must return to the first brick. We must go back to the damp and smoggy streets of Los Angeles in 1941. At that time, the American dream was not a digital algorithm, it was a physical struggle for territory. Carl Karcher was not a man of destiny in his own mind, he was a man of necessity. While others saw the sun setting over the Pacific as a moment of beauty, Karcher saw it as a countdown to the next day of labor. He borrowed $311 against his Plymouth automobile to buy a single hot dog cart. Think about that for a moment, $311. In today's economy, that is less than a single monthly payment on a mid-sized sedan. But in 1941, it was the price of a future. Do you believe that Carl Karcher started this journey because he had a passion for feeding the masses? You would be mistaken. He did not care about the culinary arts. He cared about the physics of the transaction. The hot dog cart was not a restaurant, it was a mobile testing laboratory for human behavior. He realized that the American worker in the 1940s was undergoing a fundamental shift. The car was becoming the new skeleton of the American body. People were moving faster and they were less willing to wait. By positioning his cart at the intersection of Florence and Central in Los Angeles, he was not just selling meat in a bun, he was selling time. He was exploiting a structural defect in the traditional dining model, which was too slow and too static for a city that was beginning to move at 60 miles per hour. This brings us to our first reversal. Was Carl Karcher a dreamer who wanted to bring joy to every corner of California? The reality is much colder. He was a survivalist who understood that sentiment is a luxury the poor cannot afford. Every penny was tracked, every mustard stain was a loss in efficiency. This was not the birth of a brand, it was the birth of a relentless logic that would eventually grow into the algorithm we see today. The modern echo of that first hot dog cart is found in every automated kiosk and every GPS-optimized delivery route. When you see a notification on your smartphone telling you that your burger is 2 minutes away, you are experiencing the digital ghost of Karcher's stopwatch. He understood that in a capitalist landscape, speed is the only currency that never devalues. By 1945, Karcher had moved from the sidewalk to the kitchen, opening his first full restaurant in Anaheim. This was the era when the orange groves of Orange County were being paved over to make room for the suburban explosion. He saw the coming sprawl and realized that a fixed location was a strategic fortress. He introduced the star logo, which many see as a friendly symbol of quality. But let us ask another question. Is that star a sign of a welcoming hearth, or is it a target on the map of market dominance? To Karcher, it was the latter. It was a beacon that signaled his territory in a rapidly crowding market. He was not competing for the best burger, he was competing for the most dominant presence on the road. The early days of Carl's Jr. were defined by a series of ruthless pivots. In the 1950s, as the interstate highway system began to stretch across the continent like a concrete nervous system, Karcher optimized his menu for the driver. He discarded anything that slowed down the line, and he pioneered the use of the charbroiler because it provided a consistent, mechanical result that could be replicated by low-skilled labor. This was the moment the brand lost its soul and gained its power. It was no longer about a chef's intuition, it was about a machine's output. This is the same logic used by Silicon Valley today. They take a complex human interaction and strip away the variables until it can be scaled to infinity. Consider the mundane metaphor of the New York City subway system. Just as the subway is designed to move millions of people through tunnels with maximum throughput and minimum friction, Karcher's early kitchens were designed to move thousands of calories through a window with the same clinical precision. He was not building a kitchen, he was building a refinery. The raw material was beef and bread, and the finished product was profit. The social cost of this efficiency was already becoming apparent in the 1960s. The labor was repetitive, the environment was high pressure. But for Karcher, these were simply the costs of doing business. It was a trade-off that would eventually allow the brand to expand to over 1,000 locations. The bottom line is that the ruthlessness of the origin is what allowed for the luxury of the present. We like to imagine that great companies are built on a foundation of kindness and innovation, but the data tells a different story. They are built on the ability to endure more friction than the competition. Karcher was willing to work 15 hours a day, and he expected the same from his systems. This genetic code of tireless, unfeeling efficiency is what allowed the brand to survive the economic downturns of the 1970s and the intense competition of the 1980s. As we look at the legacy of those early years, we must ask ourselves a final question for this stage. Was this a journey driven by a desire to improve the world, or was it a cold-blooded quest to own the very concept of the American meal? If you look at the growth of CKE restaurants, you will see that they did not stop until they controlled every aspect of the supply chain. They bought the land, they bought the logistics, they bought the mind share of the consumer. The seed was planted in the smog of Los Angeles, but it was a seed that was engineered to consume everything around it. Now that seed has grown into a global nervous system. The DNA of that first hot dog cart has evolved into a complex web of steel and fiber optics. The mechanical charbroiler of the 1950s has become the automated engine of the 21st century. But the goal remains the same, so to understand how this origin story translated into the physical machine that surrounds us today, we must look inside the gears. We must see how the algorithm of domination takes these early lessons and applies them to a world of 8 billion people. The blueprint is complete. Now we enter the factory. Those small choices from the past have now manifested into a colossal entity of steel and fiber optics. We must understand that the seed planted by Carl Karcher in the smog of Los Angeles was not just a recipe for a burger, it was a biological and mechanical instruction set. Today, that instruction set has evolved into a global nervous system that operates with the cold precision of a predator. We are no longer talking about a restaurant chain. We are talking about an infrastructure of inevitability. Behind the counter of every Carl's Jr. is a black box of optimization. Do you believe that the speed of your service is a result of a hardworking crew trying to be helpful? It is not. It is the result of a system that has calculated the exact limit of human endurance and mechanical throughput. This is the first substructure of their power, the kinetic factory. Every motion of a worker is a data point. Every second that a patty spends on the charbroiler is monitored by sensors that communicate back to a central hub. This is not a kitchen, it was never a kitchen. It is a refinery where the raw materials of the American landscape are processed into a high-density fuel for the suburban machine. The company has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into predictive analytics. Is this a service, or is it a calculated siege on your attention and your biology? The answer is found in the numbers. They do not wait for you to be hungry. They use the data from your smartphone, your past purchases, and even the local weather patterns to predict when you will pull into that drive-thru. If the temperature hits 90 degrees Fahrenheit in Phoenix, the algorithm knows to shift the supply chain toward cold beverages and heavier, saltier meats to trigger a specific thirst response. This is the network effect in its most visceral form. They have moved the needle from satisfying demand to creating it through mathematical certainty. The scale of this operation is truly imperial. To maintain this level of dominance, the brand controls a supply chain that is a marvel of modern engineering. Every day, a fleet of refrigerated trucks travels a total distance that could circle the Earth multiple times. They move millions of pounds of frozen beef from massive processing plants in the Midwest to thousands of points of sale across the globe. If you were to take all the soda syrup they distribute in a single year, you could fill an area equivalent to the volume of the Great Blue Hole in Belize. This is the second substructure, the fluid empire. They have achieved a level of vertical integration that allows them to control the price of a burger down to the fraction of a cent. This gives them a level of leverage over the market that makes it impossible for local businesses to compete. This gives them leverage. How can a local diner survive when their competitor owns the cows, the trucks, and the very airwaves that deliver the advertisement? The answer is vertical integration. Does this look like progress, or does it look like the slow replacement of human intuition with the cold certainty of a machine? We must ask this because the cost of this optimization is not found on the balance sheet. It is found in the systemic friction of the modern workforce. The workers are no longer trained to be cooks. They are trained to be operators of the algorithm. They are given scripts, they are given timers, and they are given no room for error. The system is designed to be idiot-proof, which in turn makes the human element redundant. This is a cold-blooded strategy to drive down labor costs while maintaining a ballpark figure of quality that is just high enough to keep you coming back, but low enough to maximize the bottom line. The third substructure is the digital cage. This is the loyalty app and the digital ecosystem that surrounds the brand. This is not about giving you a free burger on your birthday. It is about capturing your digital shadow. Every time you use the app, you are giving them the keys to your behavior. They know where you live, they know how fast you drive, and they know what time of night you lose your self-control. This data is more valuable than the beef itself. In the modern economy, Carl's Jr. is a data company that happens to sell burgers. They use this information to build a psychological moat around their customers, making it easier to stay within their ecosystem than to leave it. Convenience is the most powerful drug in the North American daily life. It is the grease that allows the wheels of capitalism to turn without making a sound. We tell ourselves that we use the drive-thru because we are busy, but the reality is that the drive-thru was designed to make us busy. It is part of a grand design to keep us moving, keep us consuming, and keep us dependent on the system. The convenience offered by Carl's Jr. is a strategic trap. It is a way to ensure that you never have to think about where your food comes from or what it is doing to your body. The bottom line is that the algorithm of domination does not care about your health, your happiness, or your local community. It only cares about the expansion of the system. It is a machine that has found the perfect intersection of human biology and corporate greed. It has turned the act of eating into a transaction of data and capital. As we look at the thousands of glowing stars across the map of the United States, we are seeing the points of a crown. A crown that belongs to a king who does not have a face, only a set of equations. The machine is now perfect, it is efficient, it is heartless, and it is growing. But a perfect machine is not built to stand still, it is built for conquest. Now that the internal gears are turning with absolute precision, the brand is ready to use this engine to erase its rivals from the map. We have seen how it works, now we will see how it kills. The machine was now perfect, but a perfect machine is not built to stand still. Those small choices from the past have now manifested into a colossal entity of steel and fiber optics, and that entity required a target. By the late 1990s, the American fast food landscape was a crowded stadium of aging gladiators. McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's were locked in a war of attrition, fighting over pennies and trying to be everything to everyone. They were distracted by the rising tide of health consciousness and the demand for salads. While the giants were looking at the green leaves of the suburbs, Carl's Jr. was aiming for the red meat of the American heartland. This was not a competition, it was a strategic bloodbath. Was this a fair fight between equals? Do you believe that Carl's Jr. was simply another player in the burger wars? If you do, you have misunderstood the nature of the predatory algorithm we have been tracking. This was a massacre of efficiency. The competitors were still looking at old maps, while CKE Restaurants was already using satellite imagery to target their missiles. They did not want the whole market, they wanted the most profitable segment of it. They identified a demographic they called the young hungry guy, a consumer who did not care about calories or corporate social responsibility. This consumer wanted mass, salt, and fat, and they wanted it delivered with an attitude that mirrored their own. This brings us to the first masterstroke, the Hardee's assimilation. In 1997, CKE Restaurants executed a hostile takeover of the culture of the American East and Midwest. They purchased Hardee's for $1.2 billion. At the time, Hardee's was a struggling brand with a confused identity. It was a dying giant in a graveyard of rural towns. But the strategic masterminds at Carl's Jr. did not see a dying brand. They saw a massive, pre-built infrastructure of real estate and drive-through windows. They moved with the cold precision of a colonizing force. They did not try to fix Hardee's, they erased it from the inside out. They forced the Carl's Jr. DNA into every kitchen, replacing the menu with the charbroiled thick burger and the star logo. This was the moment they moved the needle from being a West Coast player to a national hegemon. Do you think they cared about the local history of those thousands of Midwestern locations? Or do you think they mourned the loss of the breakfast biscuits that people had eaten for decades? They did not. The bottom line was the only metric that mattered. They were willing to lose the legacy customers if it meant they could install their high-margin, high-calorie engine in every corner of the country. This was a zero-sum game. Every square foot of a Hardee's that was converted was a square foot of territory stolen from the traditional giants. They were building a fortress of capital, brick by brick, across the entire map of the United States. The second masterstroke was the demographic sniper. While McDonald's was spending millions of dollars on Happy Meals to attract children, Carl's Jr. was spending their capital on provocative, hypermasculine marketing. They understood that the young, hungry guy would spend twice as much as a family of four in a single sitting if you gave him a reason to feel like a rebel. They used celebrities and models not just to sell a burger, but to create a psychological barrier. They were telling the families and the health conscious that this place was not for them. This was a brilliant move of exclusion. By pushing people away, they made those who remained feel like they were part of an elite, messy club. They were not just selling beef, they were selling a membership to a tribe of overindulgence. Is this a sustainable way to run a business, or is it a short-term gamble on human impulse? The answer lies in the financial reality of the early 2000s. Their margins exploded. By focusing on a high-price, high-volume product, they achieved a level of profitability that made their competitors look sluggish. They were not fighting for the ballpark figure of the average consumer, they were sniping the high-value targets. They were like a predator in a forest, ignoring the thousands of rabbits to hunt the single fat deer. This was a bloodbath of precision. The third masterstroke was the supply chain purge. Because they had vertical integration, they could withstand a price war that would bankrupt a smaller competitor. When the price of beef fluctuated, Carl's Jr. did not blink. They owned the logistics. They owned the contracts. They could afford to keep their prices stable while their rivals were forced to raise theirs. This was the point of no return for many regional burger chains. They could not compete with the sheer physical scale of the CKE engine. In cities across the South and the West, local diners and small chains began to flicker and die, replaced by the glowing yellow star. It was an extinction event driven by clinical efficiency. Every time a local business closed its doors, the star grew brighter. The aftermath of this war is visible in every strip mall in America. You see the ruins of the competition in the empty storefronts and the rebranded buildings. But you see the victory of Carl's Jr. in the line of trucks idling in the drive-thru at midnight. They did not just win the war, they redesigned the battlefield so that they are the only ones who know how to fight on it. They have turned the American landscape into a series of tactical points on a global grid. But as the dust settles on the battlefield, we must look closer at the cost of this victory. The empire is secure, but the foundation is starting to show signs of structural fatigue. The ruthless efficiency that allowed them to conquer the market is now creating a friction that cannot be solved with a marketing campaign. The victory was total, but the bill is coming due. The chessboard has been cleared, but the real wounds and the hidden costs of this dominance are about to be revealed. It is time to step away from the maps and the financial reports and look at the actual human and social price of the star. The celebration is over. Now we are faced with a bill as heavy as the trophies the empire has won. On a gray morning in early 2023, the air around the corporate headquarters in Franklin, Tennessee feels heavy. It is not the humidity of the South, but the weight of structural fatigue. For years, we have watched the star ascend, powered by the ruthless efficiency of the algorithm. But as the system reaches its absolute limit, the friction is becoming impossible to ignore. We are witnessing the moment where the growth of the machine begins to grind against the very fabric of the society that built it. Is this a sign of corporate failure, or is it simply the logical conclusion of a system that was never designed to coexist with human limits? Those who have followed the rise of Carl's Jr. often see the controversies as isolated incidents. They see a labor strike here, a health report there, and a lawsuit in another state. But the strategic mastermind understands that these are not bugs in the software. They are features. We are looking at a bill that has been accruing for over 80 years, written in the ink of social debt. The first friction point is the human cost of the 3-minute window. Inside the kitchen, the temperature often hovers around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The workers are measured by a dashboard that counts every second of their existence. If a burger takes 3 minutes and 5 seconds to reach the window, the system registers a failure. This is not just a management style, it is a clinical deconstruction of human labor. The bottom line is that the algorithm has determined that the cost of high turnover is lower than the cost of slowing down. In the United States, the fast food industry sees turnover rates that often exceed 100% annually. In the United States, the fast food industry sees turnover rates that often exceed 100% annually. Do you believe this is because the work is too hard? It is not. It is because the system has been optimized to make the individual worker redundant. When you strip away all room for error and intuition, you strip away the reason for a human to stay. This is the systemic friction of the 21st century. The machine is so perfect that it no longer needs people, yet it cannot function without them. This is the paradox that led to the massive labor disputes and the public fallout during the nomination of the former CEO, Andy Puzder, for Secretary of Labor. His philosophy was a mirror of the brand, a belief that the minimum wage should be a ballpark figure, not a living reality. The second friction point is the caloric debt. For decades, Carl's Jr. moved the needle by offering more mass for less money. They won the war of the red meat by betting on the American appetite for excess. But now, the data is coming back with a cold reality. The United States is facing an obesity epidemic that costs the healthcare system hundreds of billions of dollars every single year. The average adult in America has gained over 20 pounds since the Star first began its national expansion. Is the brand responsible for the choices of the consumer, or is the brand responsible for engineering a product so biologically addictive that choice becomes an illusion? We must ask this because the friction is no longer just health, it is economic. As cities across the country deal with the rising costs of heart disease and diabetes, they are looking for someone to pay the bill. The Star, once a symbol of roadside freedom, is now being viewed by some as a sign of a food desert. In many rural areas, the only place to find a meal within a 20-mile radius is a glowing yellow star. This is the territorial siege reaching its final, grim form. By outcompeting every local grocery store and independent diner, the system has created a monopoly on survival. The social cost of this dominance is the erosion of the local economy. For every dollar that enters the register of a corporate franchise, only a fraction of a cent stays in the local community. The rest is siphoned off to the skyscrapers of Tennessee or the private equity vaults in New York. The third friction point is the regulatory wall. For years, the empire operated with a level of freedom that would be impossible today. They navigated the legal landscape with the agility of a startup. But now, the machine is so large that its movements distort the market. Every decision made by CKE restaurants is now under the microscope of antitrust regulators and environmental groups. The sheer volume of beef required to fuel the engine means that the brand has a carbon footprint the size of a small nation. The logistics network, which covers millions of miles every month, is a major contributor to the wear and tear of the American interstate system. The public is starting to realize that the cheap burger at the window is actually being subsidized by their taxes and their environment. This is the hidden balance sheet of the empire. On one side, we see the billions of dollars in revenue and the thousands of locations. On the other side, we see a landscape of asphalt and obesity, a workforce that is exhausted, and a regulatory system that is finally waking up. Do we hate the system because it is cruel, or do we hate it because it shows us exactly what we are willing to sacrifice for a half pound of charbroiled beef? This is not a moral failing of a single company. It is the friction of a civilization that has prioritized throughput over everything else. The Star is still glowing, but the light is flickering under the weight of these contradictions. The masterminds who designed this blueprint understood how to conquer, but they did not account for the limit of the soil. They assumed the expansion could go on forever, that the human body and the American town could absorb an infinite amount of salt, fat, and efficiency. They were wrong. The shadows are deep and the system is rigid. We are approaching the point where the machine can no longer grow without breaking itself. The history of the hot dog cart and the triumph of the bloodbath have led us here to this moment of structural tension. We have seen the power, we have seen the origin, and we have seen the war. Now we must face the verdict. The empire is at a crossroads, and so are we. The grand design is complete, but the question remains, what happens when the designer is trapped inside his own creation? The shadows are deep and the system is rigid, but we cannot afford to simply stand still and criticize. We have traveled from the smoggy streets of 1941 Los Angeles to the high-tech corridors of modern Tennessee, and what we have found is not just a fast food company. We have found a manual for the modern world. This is the grand synthesis of 80 years of strategic evolution. It is a story of how a single hot dog cart borrowed against a car became a global predator by understanding one simple, terrifying truth. Human biology is the ultimate vulnerability in the capitalist equation. We like to think of ourselves as independent actors making conscious choices about what we eat and how we live. But the blueprint of Carl's Jr. proves that our choices are often just the final output of an algorithm that knew we were hungry before we did. You are not. In the eyes of the mastermind, you are the raw material. Do you believe that you are the customer in this transaction? Your cravings are the energy that powers the machine, and your data is the lubricant that keeps the gears turning. This is not a business of feeding people, it is a business of harvesting them. We have seen how they use the territorial siege to claim the physical landscape, and how they use the caloric monopoly to claim the biological landscape. Now we must understand the 3 lessons that this giant offers to anyone who wants to survive in the world they have built. The first lesson is the law of invisible chains. We live in a culture that worships convenience as the ultimate good. We want everything faster, cheaper, and easier, but Carl's Jr. teaches us that convenience is the most effective form of control. When a system makes it so easy to consume that you no longer have to think, you lose the ability to choose. The drive-thru is not a service for your benefit, it is a funnel designed to strip away your friction and your resistance. By the time you reach the window, the transaction is already complete. The lesson for the observer is clear. If you cannot see the chains, it is because you are already wearing them. True freedom in the 21st century is the ability to choose the difficult path over the convenient one. The second lesson is the principle of ruthless efficiency. We are taught that people are the most important part of any business. But the history of the star tells a different story. In this system, people are components. They are variables to be minimized. From the workers in the kitchen to the consumers in the parking lot, everyone is treated with the same clinical detachment. This is how you build an empire that can survive any crisis. You build it so that no single person is indispensable. You build it so that the machine can keep turning even if the humans inside it are exhausted or broken. The bottom line is that empathy is a luxury that the machine cannot afford. If you want to move the needle in a global market, you must be willing to sacrifice the individual for the sake of the throughput. The third lesson is the doctrine of selective identity. Most brands spend their entire lives trying to be liked by everyone. They want to be the safe middle-of-the-road choice. Carl's Jr. took the opposite path. They realized that in a crowded market, being hated by the right people is just as valuable as being loved by your target. By embracing the role of the villain, by leaning into the messy, loud, and overindulgent, they created a psychological moat that their competitors could not cross. They did not need a majority of the market, they only needed a dedicated tribe of addicts. This is the ultimate strategic masterstroke. They turned a commodity product into a tribal badge. They proved that you do not need to be good, you only need to be unavoidable for those who crave what you have. Is this progress, or is it a sign that we have reached the end of the human era of commerce? We must ask this because the machine is not done growing. As we look toward the horizon, the projection is clear. The next 10 years will see the total integration of the digital and physical realms. We are moving toward a world of predictive hunger, where the algorithm will anticipate your loss of self-control and have a burger waiting for you before you even feel the first pang of appetite. They are already testing drone delivery systems that can travel 10 miles in less than 5 minutes, ensuring that the star is never more than a few moments away. They are looking at AI-driven menus that change in real time based on the heart rate and pupil dilation of the customer at the kiosk. From the cornfields of Iowa to the skyscrapers of Manhattan, the landscape is being redesigned to serve the needs of the machine. The bottom line is that Carl's Jr. has already won. They have successfully mapped the American subconscious and turned our most basic instincts into a source of infinite capital. They have skin in the game at every level of our existence. We are the architects of our own cage, and we pay for the privilege of staying inside it every time we pull into that glowing yellow star. We like to imagine that we can return to a simpler time, to the 1941 hot dog cart, where a man and his wife sold snacks for a few cents. But that cart is gone. It has been consumed by the very logic that it created. We must now face the final verdict. This brand is not a failure of morality, it is a triumph of logic. It is the perfect expression of a system that values expansion over health and efficiency over humanity. It is the world we have chosen, one 3-pound burger at a time. We can criticize the social debt and the systemic friction, but as long as we continue to crave the charbroiled meat, the machine will continue to turn. The grand design is not something that was done to us, it is something that we are doing to ourselves. We are the fuel, we are the data, and we are the legacy. Can we ever break free from the algorithm? Or have we become so dependent on the convenience and the dopamine that the idea of a different world is now more frightening than the one we have? The answer is not in the financial reports or the marketing campaigns. The answer is in your next choice. The star is watching, and it is already calculating your next move. The machine is ready. The question is, are you? This was behind the logo.